Kilmar Garcia's story begins in El Salvador. He fled his home country in 2011, escaping the grip of rampant gang violence. He was just a teenager seeking safety and a chance at a better life. His journey led him to the United States, where he sought refuge and began to build a new life. In 2019, his efforts to secure legal protection were successful. He was granted a specific legal status that shielded him from deportation. This status recognized the danger he faced in his homeland. It acknowledged the very real threat of persecution from the gangs he had fled. He was finally able to live without the fear of being sent back to the dangers he had risked everything to escape. He had made a home in Maryland, building a life with his family. He had no criminal record in the U.S., a testament to his character and his commitment to his new home. His story, up until this point, was one of resilience, hope, and the promise of safety found in a new land. In a shocking turn of events, Kilmar Garcia's life was thrown into turmoil. In March 2025, he was deported to El Salvador. This act was a grave mistake, a bureaucratic error with life-altering consequences. The U.S. government had mistakenly deported a man who had legal protection to remain in the country. The error sent shockwaves through Garcia's life and ignited a firestorm of legal and political battles. A judge swiftly ordered his return, recognizing the injustice of the situation. The case escalated to the highest court in the land. The Supreme Court, in a partial upholding of the lower court's order, demanded action. They mandated that the U.S. government take concrete steps to facilitate Garcia's return. This ruling was a clear acknowledgement of the wrong that had been committed. It put the onus on the U.S. government to right this wrong and bring Garcia home. The Supreme Court ruling, however, did not mark the end of Garcia's ordeal. It unveiled another layer of complexity in his already tangled case. El Salvador, the very country he had fled in fear, refused to release him. President Nayib Bukele, the nation's leader, stood firm in his decision. He cited alleged ties between Garcia and MS-13, a notorious gang with a fearsome reputation. These claims, however, were based on shaky ground. They lacked concrete evidence, relying on unsubstantiated claims that cast a shadow of doubt over Garcia's character. The Trump administration, despite acknowledging the mistake in deporting Garcia, found themselves in an unexpected position. They echoed El Salvador's claims, lending credence to the unsubstantiated allegations of gang affiliation. They maintained that El Salvador as a sovereign nation had the final say in Garcia's fate. This stance placed the U.S. government in the awkward position of defending a deportation they themselves had deemed erroneous. It raised questions about the motivations behind their alignment with El Salvador's position, and fueled the growing controversy surrounding Garcia's case. The case of Kilmar Garcia became a political flashpoint, exposing the deep divisions within the U.S. government. The Trump administration, while acknowledging the deportation error, remained steadfast in their support of El Salvador's decision. They argued that El Salvador, as a sovereign nation, had the right to determine who resided within its borders. They minimized the significance of the deportation error, framing it as an unfortunate bureaucratic misstep rather than a miscarriage of justice. Democrats vehemently disagreed. They condemned the deportation and criticized the Trump administration's handling of the situation. They viewed the administration's stance as a betrayal of American values and a failure to protect an individual who had been unjustly caught in the crosshairs of flawed immigration policies. They demanded Garcia's immediate return, arguing that the U.S. had a moral obligation to right this wrong and bring him home. The partisan divide on this issue highlighted the stark differences in how both sides viewed immigration, national sovereignty, and the responsibility of the U.S. government to protect individuals from harm. As the political battle raged on, a group of Democratic lawmakers took matters into their own hands. On April 16, 2025, a delegation of lawmakers, including Senator Chris Van Hollen, Representative Maxwell Frost, and potentially Representative Yasemin Ansari, embarked on a mission to El Salvador. Their goal was twofold: to advocate for Kilmar Garcia's release, and to assess his condition firsthand. This trip was a bold move, a clear demonstration of the lawmakers' commitment to securing Garcia's return. It signaled their dissatisfaction with the Trump administration's efforts and their determination to use their platform to shine a light on this injustice. The delegation aimed to engage in direct dialogue with Salvadoran officials, urging them to reconsider their stance and allow for Garcia's return to the U.S. Their visit also aimed to assess Garcia's well-being, ensuring he was being treated humanely while in Salvadoran custody. The delegation's findings from this trip were expected to further fuel the debate back home, adding another layer of complexity to the already contentious case. The fight for Kilmar Garcia's return intensified, playing out on both legal and political fronts. A U.S. judge demonstrating a commitment to justice turned up the heat on the Trump administration. He gave them a 2-week ultimatum demanding they show tangible progress in securing Garcia's release. He even hinted at the possibility of contempt proceedings, a serious legal threat that underscored the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, Democrats continued to apply pressure, seizing every opportunity to criticize the administration's handling of the case. They called for accountability, demanding answers and action. They organized rallies, gave impassioned speeches, and used their legislative power to raise awareness and push for Garcia's return. The White House, however, remained defiant. They defended their actions, arguing that they were doing everything in their power within the confines of the law and respecting El Salvador's sovereignty. This back and forth highlighted the high stakes of this case, with both sides entrenched in their positions. It transformed the fight for one man's freedom into a larger battle over immigration policy, diplomatic relations, and the very meaning of justice. As the legal and political battles raged on, Kilmar Garcia found himself trapped in a nightmare. He was being held in El Salvador's SECO, the terrorism confinement center. His detention in this facility, notorious for its harsh conditions, only added to the injustice of his situation. He was a man without a country, caught between a nation that mistakenly deported him and another that refused to let him go. His future remained uncertain, his fate hanging in the balance. Would the legal and political pressure be enough to secure his release? Would he be allowed to return to the life he had built in the U.S.? Or would he be forced to remain in the country he had risked everything to escape? His story was a stark reminder of the human cost of flawed immigration policies and the urgent need for reform. The complexities of Kilmar Garcia's case were further compounded by the relationship between President Trump and President Bukele. The two leaders had developed a rapport, with Trump publicly praising Bukele's leadership and his approach to tackling crime in El Salvador. This amicable relationship raised questions about whether it influenced the Trump administration's handling of Garcia's case. Was the administration prioritizing its relationship with El Salvador over its obligation to right a wrong committed against an individual with legal protection in the U.S.? The timing of a recent meeting between the two presidents fueled these concerns. President Trump, shortly before Garcia's case gained national attention, had met with President Bukele and explicitly commended El Salvador's prison system, the very system where Garcia was being held. This praise, while seemingly unrelated to Garcia's case, raised eyebrows and fueled speculation about whether political considerations were overshadowing the pursuit of justice for Garcia. The case of Kilmar Garcia transcended the plight of one man. It served as a microcosm of the larger issues plaguing the U.S. immigration system. It highlighted the flaws in a system prone to errors, the human cost of these errors, and the urgent need for reform. Garcia's story sparked a national conversation about the use of gang affiliation allegations in deportation cases. The lack of concrete evidence against him brought to light the concerning ease with which such allegations could be levied, often based on flimsy evidence or discriminatory profiling. It raised questions about due process, the burden of proof, and the presumption of innocence, particularly when dealing with individuals facing deportation. Furthermore, the case shone a spotlight on the power dynamics between the U.S. and El Salvador. The U.S. government's apparent deference to El Salvador's decision, despite acknowledging the error in Garcia's deportation, underscored the complexities of international relations and the challenges of securing justice for individuals caught in the crosshairs of these complexities. Ultimately, the case of Kilmar Garcia served as a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the human faces behind immigration statistics and the urgent need for a more just and compassionate approach to immigration policy.